Hello everyone and welcome to Project Builds presented by Mömus, makers of stuffforcarguys, and today we got our newly acquired VW Passat here, our 5B Passat 1.8 turbo, and we're gonna do the technical inspection prior to actually purchasing it. We did this type of video before showing you the telltale signs and the tips and tricks of what to look out for when you're buying a second-hand car. But today we're doing the real technological inspection of the vehicle and really what to look out for, what to hear for, what to listen to, what to look at and what to feel. So there are a couple things to do. First of all, of course, look at the engine under the hood. Then we'll take a look around the body of the car and inside and in the trunk. And then we'll go on a little test drive just to see how the car performs. So there are two things that you're really gonna need today. First of all, the flashlight, and second of all, you're gonna need a lot of paper towel. So let me open the bonnet and I'll explain why. So now that we're under the hood, first warning is the engine has to be absolutely cold when you do this, because you want to touch things, you want to feel things, you want to open things, and you don't want to burn yourself. So you can start with just doing a simple fluid check. This is, in this Passat generation of Passat, this is the water reservoir or the coolant reservoir. And when a coolant system is in good order, you want to hear a pressure relief when you open it. Let's see if we're gonna hear that. Yeah, there it was. So the system is under pressure, and you can see here there's a minimum and a maximum level that it has to be between. You want to open it to release the pressure and see where it comes to. So that looks very good. Also, you can have a look inside if you're already there. To see if the coolant is clean. So the way you check your dipstick is you take it out, right? Then you clean off the bottom and you dip it back in all the way down. Then you take it out again and then you do an oil reading. You can't read the first oil because the engine or the oil is constantly moving in the engine. So if you do the first reading, it will be higher or lower than it actually is, because the oil is wishing around in the sump. So let's go ahead and do that. I will put you down and then we'll have a look. So the way you do this is you take your paper and your dipstick, give it a very good wipe, and then put it back in. Take it out again and let's have a reading here. And we are about halfway. This would be the maximum point, that would be the minimum, and there you can see the fluid level. And you can put that back in. And then with a fresh piece of paper we're going to do the same for the power steering fluid. For this is exactly the same process. Usually the dipstick is inside of the cap. If it's not, you will have to check the separate dipstick, of course. So you take it, give it a good wipe all the way down and then back out, and then you check the level. And in this car it seems actually it's overfilled, so we will have to take some out. Okay, so that's the fluid check done. Let me put this back on 1 second. That would conclude the fluid check. The next thing you can check is inside of the oil cap. You want to look out for an oil cap that's clean, and there shouldn't be any mayonnaise or condensation or something on the inside of it. And then also you want to look for any smudge on the inside of the engine. So let's open it. And this one looks actually relatively good for a 1.8 liter turbo from the Volkswagen group, because they tend to be very smudgy indeed. That would conclude our whole fluids test in here. Then make sure that you take the paper away, because you don't want to start a fire when you're driving around with this. Then next up, what that we're gonna check, and that's why we need the light, is we're going to look for any fluid leaks or something similar from the engine. We're going to check all the containers, the engine itself, the block. Also look around the turbo. There you go. Just take your light and take your time. Look for any leaks. If the engine is indeed cold, you can have a feel around. Just carefully put your hand, if you don't trust it, take some paper towels around your hand and go around the block and around the containers, but really do make sure that it's all cold, of course. And then we're going to check every single container and the block, and most importantly the turbo of the 1.8 is down here. You want to make sure that's not leaking or weeping, that it's completely dry. And then also good areas to check are behind the block, because of course that's where heat builds up, so the gasket may be more prone to failure. And this one doesn't look that bad at all. Everything looks dry, I don't see any leakages. Then the next point, for which we will again need the flashlight, is to check the chassis beams. The chassis beams, you will recognize there are two longitudinal beams coming to the front of the car, and they will connect a impact part to the front. So here we have one, might be a little bit difficult to see. Here we have one, you can see it down there. My hand is now resting on it, and you want to see if that seam that my hand is now resting on my finger, is straight and not mangled up or welded or strange looking. Should look like it's in one straight piece and not mangled up. We'll do the same on the other side, a little bit more. It will be a little bit harder to find in there because right there is the turbo, but I can see it down there behind the heat shield, and it also looks straight and true. Then another point to check here under the hood, which will bring us smoothly along to the body check, is that we want to check the bolts of the fenders. Now this is of course something that's not very important, because fenders do have to be replaced at some point, but to check if the car is all original and damage free, if it's advertised like that, is to look at the bolts. They have to be coated with the paint of the car. So the car gets assembled at the factory, the fenders are on, they come along with the spray gun, and they will paint the inside too. That's why the bolts are under the paint. If it has been replaced, then that seal of paint is broken, because the bolts have to come off. Right, so you do the same on the other side. And then my flashlight has this little magnet on the back. If yours doesn't, then you need to take a separate magnet, because then we're going to do a body check. Here's a good example right over here. So this car has some parking damage, as you can see. The damage is to the bumper and the fender. The bumper itself has to be replaced because it's cracked in half. As you can see, the owner tried to do some DIY home job here of holding it together. That's actually the primary reason that it has to be replaced, because now there are ugly holes in it. So the bumper will be replaced, and the fender, I think it's good enough to be repaired. But if the fender is already repaired and it looks a bit sketchy, and the car is for sale as a never repaired, original everything, then you can take your magnet and you can feel, see, here it sticks because it's just metal. If there would be any plaster layer underneath, it wouldn't stick. So you can take your magnet, go down the whole car. You might want to put, if it's a very rare car, you might want to put something in between the magnet and the paint so as not to damage it. Here that's not the case. Just take your magnet and check every panel. Also down there, you remember on the E39, this is exactly what we repaired with plaster as an experiment. And in here it seems all good. So you check every panel if it sticks. Of course on the bumpers it's not going to stick because those are plastic, but these type of areas where usually the hit comes, you want to make sure that it's all good. Then you do the other side as well. Alright, really make sure that it's going to stick everywhere. Oh, it's working. If some areas look suspicious, really go down centimeter by centimeter, because it might be the case that some spots have plaster, but in here everything looks straight, so an original. So I'm just gonna do a general walk around with it, and that should be that. Okay, for the light. Okay, that looks good. So the body check is complete. Also you want to check for things like paint edges. I'm sorry about the noises of all the trucks coming around here. The dealer is right next to a truck repair service. But now you have the bonnet open, it's also a good time to check for paint edges. If a car has been resprayed, usually the tape edge is along here, and then you will feel the edge of the paint if it hasn't been repaired properly. If it has been repaired properly, then there's no big deal, because the car will look like original, and then it doesn't really matter. You want to feel every single seam in the car, and do the other side as well. You want to feel paint edges. For paint edges, you can check also the door gaps. They should be the same all along the car, as you can see. And then inside the tank flap as well, it's also good. This one has the button. 1 second. So you want to open this, feel inside for any paint edges, maybe even tape rest or something like that. You want to feel every single gap in between the panels for that. Open all the doors, check in there, you know, look around. Maybe the tape was a bit further inside, but this all looks good. There are some scratches here that will have to be polished out, and the bumper and the fender will have to be done on this car. And then I think this car is so straight afterwards, so nice, really worth it. Okay, so after you've done the whole check, you come around to the trunk, and inside the trunk you want to check under the floor. Want to lift up the carpet. So then you want to lift up the carpet and really look under the floor. You want to open this and lift it all up, and under there you will check if the stickers on this side of the lock panel, on the inside of the lock panel, are still there. You want to check also the welding seams all along the floor of the trunk. If they look dodgy or not original or messed up, then it's an indication that the floor of the trunk had to be replaced because of a big hit in the back. You want to check if the stickers are there, because usually they are also not replaced. So if everything looks fine but the stickers are not there, they're usually not ordered for the new trunk floor, and then you know that could be an indication as well. I just did this already, and then afterwards the seller was so kind to put the winter tires inside, so I'm going to leave them there now for the trip back. But this floor is clean. Voila! Then we are going to go on the test drive. Right, then we're going to go on the test drive with our beautiful new car, and we are going to check and feel and look for things that could be indications of premature wear, of dodgy reparations, or just of technical defaults. So let's hop in and do the test. After the test, there are some things to check as well. For example, you want to lie down under the front of the car right there and look up at the engine or at the covers if there are any oil drips. If there are, then you know that the engine is leaking and you should walk away anyway. So let's have a look. As you can see, this one is dry as can be. totally dry engine, very well looking, very safe. So then we come back up and we do another walk around the car. If there are any smells, maybe the car smells of petrol from the tank area, maybe there's the brake smell, maybe the clutch smells. If there are any smells, just be sure to make sure what they come from, and if it's a big enough reason to walk away. Sometimes a petrol smell can also be a fuel filter that was replaced and not reconnected correctly. If it's a hole in the tank, it's around about €1,000 or more for a new tank usually. If it's just a fuel filter, it's 2 minutes work. So be sure to make sure what it comes from, and then be sure to walk away if you have any doubts. Don't fall in love with the car. Usually there are plenty of examples to choose from, and plenty of models to choose from, and you don't have to shoot yourself in the leg just because you got excited with the first one you looked at. Inside the cabin, especially the driver's area, you want to make sure that things don't look worn out for their kilometer, for the indicated kilometers that the car is for sale with. Because if the car has only done, for example, 100,000, and you get into the seat and it makes springy noises, you're sure it's not 100,000, it could be triple that. Then the steering wheel as well, it shouldn't look worn out, the leather should carry the normal color, shouldn't be any holes in it, stuff like that. Then you want to make sure everything works. Try every single button. Let's get in and I'll show you. Right in there, try every single button, you know, make sure the radio works, all the air conditioning and so forth. The air conditioning should come out ice cold if you put it on its lowest settings. Rear window heater, if you're not sure or it's warm outside, spray some water on it, put the heater on. It should make lines eventually in the water. Test the seat heating, lights, everything should work. Then move around a bit, try the steering wheel if there's no excessive play in it, if the seats don't make noise, do all the windows work, that the armrest comes up and down, everything like that. You want to make sure it works before you head out on the drive. Because in here, if there are a couple things to repair, usually a seat or something is not cheap. It could mean that if you have to repair or replace even a couple things in here, that the car is not even economically viable or feasible anymore. Here we got the key. I'm gonna start it up. All the lights should come on as normal, like they do in here. And when you start the car, all the lights should go out. Here it says "Bitte tanken," that's German for please fill up the gas tank, gas light, and the parking brake, which also goes out as normal. Then you want to check the board computer as well, in here on the Passat that's on this indicator stalk. Just make sure that all the pixels work, and so forth and so forth. Then we've got the air conditioning already checked, comes out ice cold, very nice. So I think we should go on the drive. If you start the engine as well, if you are with friends, it's nice to have someone in the back and someone in the front when you start the car. You listen from the side or from the driver's seat for any exhaust gases. Someone in front can listen to the engine, and someone in the back can look out for smoke from the tailpipe. The smoke shouldn't be gray, it shouldn't be white. It can be like this condensed smoke, that's fine. If it's gray or bluish, then it means there's oils in the cylinder. If it's white, it could mean a head gasket, like a thick white, like a tire smoke white. That's no good. So let's head out here, the lights on, safety first as they say. Let's go. Already the first few meters, you should check how does the car pick up the clutch. How does the steering wheel move? Does it move with clunks when you move it, or a nice continuous line? And listen to the engine, how does it pick up the revs? The engine is cold, don't give it too much, of course. How does the car hang on the throttle? And then pick a bumpy road to listen to suspension noises. But this car seems very nice. There are no rattles, no noises. The interior stays quiet when you go over bumps, so does the suspension, and it all seems fine. So I've actually driven this car already. I just wanted to let you hear it. This car performs very well, and I don't hear any clunks or noises. When you take it out on the open road, you want to go through a couple of gears. Don't rev it out, it's not your car, but at least feel what the revs are doing, or what the engine is doing when you come to the higher rev range. Right, so if we go here, for example, give it a bit of a whiz. That sounds good. You know, the engine revs freely and nicely. And yeah. Want to feel especially the steering and the suspension, because that's the point that cost money in many cars, because it is hard work. Replacing a strut is a lot of work, whereas if you replace just spark plugs, it's an easy job, you know. Yeah. Does the car make any noises? This one doesn't, but you should check for noises from, for example, brakes, when you hit the brakes, or from the suspension. But all in all, it should be a clean driving experience. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time. See you. Bye bye.